Things just took a very interesting turn as we have some wild new Leafs updates to go over today. And following their big win against the Predators, there are some moves that Craig Berube has made that are not only intriguing, but has some fans scratching their heads. We'll break that down as well as discuss multiple other Leafs updates on this episode ahead. The big game again against the New York Rangers this evening. A ton to go over, as well as some quotes from Craig Berube on a couple of players, including Easton Cowan. But before we get into it all, if you're part of the 70% who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Your guys' support has been unbelievable, so thank you guys for your continued support over here. There will be a live stream following tonight's game, so make sure to stay tuned for that. There's a lot to go over today, and it's been a pretty busy day here on the Leafs side. Some moves. We saw some concerning things at the start of the day that have since kind of calmed down here. Let's dive into some of the moves that are happening today because the Leafs are back again, and it started with William Nylander not being on the ice for the full morning skate, and they play the Rangers tonight. And this obviously had some fans scratching their head. There's been a lot of discourse about William Nylander. He had his conversation with Craig Berube, had a very good game in the game the other night against the Predators, but there was some. Now, just before we get into it, he is going to be playing in tonight's game. But let's look at the lineups for today, and you're going to notice a few things here. Nyes, Matthews, Cowan, and Michelli, Tavares, Lorentz, McMahon, Domi, Robertson, of course, the same fourth line. It's the same lines, but of course, obviously, William Nylander was out. Lorentz was in the second line. Nylander's in, Lorentz is out, but Lorentz is healthy, and Nylander was just having a maintenance day. Some very weird things going on for the fourth game of the year.
Yeah, definitely. And when you look at this lineup in morning skate, when a player like Lorentz usually takes another player's spot, in this case, it means that Lorentz is going to be a healthy scratch or continue to be a healthy scratch, and Nylander should play in this case, right? And obviously we got that confirmation from Craig Berube, and some of the reporters who were there this morning were saying that William Nylander was just walking around the dressing room like he was there, but he just wasn't on the ice, and it was a maintenance thing. So he had a pretty good game last game. Nylander, I thought he played, probably his best game of the season, right? So he did respond well to what Craig Berube was saying. But the most interesting thing here is I think Lorentz being out of the lineup because he is healthy. He can return, and he has played well so far this year. So Craig Berube is really saying, I don't care. If we win, I'm sticking with that lineup. We're running it back every single time. That's something that I've definitely noticed at this point. If we win, we are running it back with that exact same lineup, minus the goaltending, of course, but that's a different case because you're not going to play Keaton Primo if you can play Stolarz today, if it's not a back-to-back. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, Steven Lorentz is healthy. He can return to the lineup, but they're keeping him out. I think that's very interesting. His skill set can help the lineup, but just running it back with the exact same thing. And William Nylander missing for maintenance. I thought that was pretty interesting as well. But another interesting storyline, I want to touch on this person in a second as well and later in the video, so stay tuned for that. We have a quote about Easton Cowan specifically. He is staying on that top line. He has looked good. He picked up his first NHL point the other night. Thank goodness it was in a win because that would have soured it a little bit. But he's staying with the top line, and there's been a lot of chatter over the last couple of days, I've heard, about should the Leafs go out and make a trade right now to get somebody to play on that right wing with Matthews. Why? He's playing well, and he's up with the big club right now.
Yeah, something to keep an eye out on as well. Nick Robertson, a lot of trade talks are happening around him. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets traded in the next few weeks. You mentioned it. Steven Lorentz, like last year, he played a ton of games, and he didn't get healthy scratch very often, if ever. I mean, very rare that happened. This year, we're 4 games in. Of course, he had a little bit of an injury. He had a really good start to the year. He was great last year, signed that, I believe, 3-year extension. They want to rock with what's, I guess, technically working in their one game that they had. That, I guess, was seen as a very big win there yesterday or the other day against the Predators. Very interesting. Sammy Blais, he hasn't even gotten in the lineup either, which is another unique factor here. But again, him, Sammy Blais, and Philip Myers as well. Let's throw his name in there. Lorentz was the placeholder. And I think the biggest thing here with Steven Lorentz, Berube, like you mentioned, maybe it's stubbornness. Maybe it's just he wants to keep the lineup that worked. I don't think personally that having Lorentz in there in exchange for whoever they decide to put him in would have made their team worse in any way. I think Lorentz has proven to be a very good player, but it's probably more the fact that they want to see what they have in Robertson. Maybe there's trade talks happening, there are, and they want to keep him out there for trade value purposes. Calle Jarnkrok, he's coming off of his worst game by far of the year. If there was a game to give him a break, give him a breather, it would have been this game. They're not doing it, and it makes things super, super interesting. And Lorentz is available, just to keep things in mind again here, but Berube didn't want to change the lineup. I find it a little puzzling. At the end of the day, though, they won. They're keeping the same lineup. We've seen Berube do this a handful of times, but I would have just replaced Lorentz with Jarnkrok, but maybe it's not that simple for them. maybe Lorentz is another day could help him from his injury, but overthinking it a little bit probably. But at the end of the day here, I would like to see Lorentz in.
And we all know the way that hockey players are and head coaches are, right? If they did make that swap and they ended up losing tonight, Berube would lose his mind because why would you change something that has worked? So I can appreciate that from that point of view, that's for sure. But like you said, Yarncroke didn't have the strongest game. If Lorentz was ready to go, we know what he brings on the fourth line. He brings 100% every single time. He's one of those Leafs, man, I love Steven Lorentz over the course of the last, 365 days that he's been on the team. He's been awesome. So one thing that is for sure, though, he's going to be out of the lineup, and it's not the biggest thing, right? Like if they were keeping Austin Matthews out of the lineup, it would be a much bigger storyline, or even William Nylander, and he's going to play tonight. But the one thing that I love with this team so far this season is Scott Laughton is out with injury right now, and you still have this much depth. Like Sammy Blais hasn't even played yet, and you got some back-to-backs coming up. This is a busier schedule this year as well. Keep that in mind because they basically don't play at all in February due to the Olympics. So it's a very jam-packed schedule. We just got past the first back-to-back. They got two more this month. They got a bunch coming up throughout the course of the year. And not just that, they just play a lot of games, even if they do have, days in between. There's just a lot of games at certain stretches in the season. So I believe there's one month where they play 16 games this year. So they're playing like almost every single day. So just having these guys waiting in the weeds, ready to go, and having that depth is really, really good for this team, where in the last, 7 years, 6 years or so, you didn't have that. You had maybe one guy, and then you'd have to make an emergency call up if anything happened from the Toronto Marlies, and that player usually didn't offer anything anyway. So I love that for this team. They're going to continue to roll with what works. That's totally fine. And, hopefully Scott Laughton's back soon as well. And then I wonder what the lineup looks like in that way. And maybe those rumors, and we're going to have another video on this too, about Nick Robertson being on his way out in November, do actually make a lot of sense at this point. So obviously we'll touch on that when we get there, but I just love the fact that they have this much depth at the end of the day.
Yeah, once Laughton comes back, they'll probably have, they will. They'll have to trade somebody. So let us know down below what your thoughts are on all of this. Sammy Blais still hasn't gotten some work in. We saw some of you guys in the live stream clamoring for him. Still having Easton Cowan a little bit, though, and William Nylander. Let's start with William Nylander, and Berube also spoke out on Cowan. So there was some conversation. We know Willie had a horrible start to the year. Berube called him out publicly. They had a conversation since then, and he looked really good in the last game. And Berube came out and said, Willie does what he does. He had the puck. He was making good decisions, of course, driving it deep, doing what he does in the ozone. I thought they were responsible defensively, and he was happy with that line. So I think a lot of it ultimately comes down to the fact that William Nylander is going to do what he does. Seemed a little bit, and he said himself and admitted that he usually starts pretty slow. The Leafs in general start slow in October. Someone who hasn't been starting slow, though, is the guy up there making $873.5 thousand in Easton Cowan. He looked absolutely fantastic. And there was a quote here that got some traction. People were excited about it. He's a dog on a bone out there, is what the quote was from Craig Berube. Now, of course, he said some other things. They're riding with him. This is now the third straight game with him on that top line. He looked really good last game, got his first career point, could have had more. And honestly, someone who's going under the radar as well here, which we'll touch on in a future video, Machelli, he looked a lot better as well. But Darius, dog on a bone, they're running it again. And this is going to be the biggest matchup for Cowan, I think, thus far. You're going up against a very talented New York Rangers team, but also you're going up against one of, if not the best goalie in the NHL here. I would love to see Easton Cowan get on the board, but also from the bigger scheme of things here in the grander mindset, they need to be better offensively than they were to start the year right now, because you're going up against, again, this was supposed to be an easy part of the schedule the first few games. They struggled. They have to take care of business against the best goalie, or at least one of them in the NHL, and Stolarz is going up as well on the other side for us tonight against the Rangers.
Shesterkin has been the best goalie in the league so far this year. He's been unbelievable. The Rangers have played 5 games, 3 of them at home. They haven't scored a goal at home yet. So they know, they're going to be hungry coming into this game. Mike Sullivan's already playing the matchup game. They played the Oilers the other night. So it's almost like a playoff game. So he's going to be doing that tonight. So you bring up a good point about Cowan. He's probably going to have a lot of responsibility tonight to shut down some guys who are, quite frankly, pissed off on the other side of the ice, right? Like they want to score some goals here. They haven't scored at home yet. And I know this game is in Toronto, but still they want this win, and they're playing much better this year. The Rangers are a different team. So it's going to be a good matchup. We'll see what Stolarz has for us as well, because obviously Monday wasn't that great, and Shesterkin has been brilliant so far this year. So should be a good matchup and a really good game, honestly.
Yeah, let us know what your thoughts are on that. A lot of moves, weird things happening earlier in the season. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.